Fierce warrior queen, crippled in battle. To be saved by human enslaved person, she despised the battlefield, was silent. Not with peace, but with the quiet that comes after slaughter. Smoke curled from broken armor, and a stench of blood hung thick in the air. Queen Seraphine Dane, the undefeated warrior queen of Valkyrian, lay broken in the mud, her legs shattered, her sword just beyond reach. Above her loomed General Vorak, his jagged blade dripping with the blood of her fallen warriors. His grin was a promise of slow, humiliating death, until a shadow moved in the ruins. A human enslaved person marked with chains, but unbroken in spirit, watched from the darkness. He had every reason to let her die, every reason to walk away. So why did he step forward? And why, when their eyes met, did the queen, who had never trusted a soul in her life, find herself reaching for his hand? Please wait. Before we start, tap that iCar button in the top right corner and smash that subscribe button. Right now, hit the notification bell so you're first in line when new stories land. All right, let's dive into the story. Chapter 1. The morning sun filtered through the dusty windows of the Rusty Anchor, the only tavern in the sleepy coastal town of Brackenford. The air smelled of salt, ale, and the faintest hint of fish, unavoidable when you live this close to the docks. Elias Thorne sat in his usual corner, nursing a mug of something that barely passed for beer, his boots propped up on the table. Another round, Elias? Marla, the tavern keeper, wiped her hands on her apron and raised an eyebrow. Or are you just going to sit there scowling at the wall all day? Elias smirked, tilting his head. Marla, if I wanted watered-down swill, I'd drink from the harbor. She scoffed, slapping his boots off the table. Then pay up or get out. You're scaring off the paying customers. A chuckle came from the bar. Only paying customer here is me, Marla, and I ain't scared of this old dog. The speaker was a broad-shouldered man with a scar running down his cheek. Garrett, a mercenary with more bravado than sense. Elias shot him a lazy grin. That's old fox to you, Garrett. Dogs chase their tails. Foxy's zeeching. Garrett snorted into his ale. Keep talking, Thorne. One day that mouth's gonna get you knifed in an alley. Promises, promises, Elias muttered just as the tavern door creaked open. A hush fell over the room as a hooded figure stepped inside, their cloak damp from the sea spray. The stranger's boots clicked against the wooden floor as they made their way to the bar, ignoring the stares. Marla folded her arms. We don't serve trouble here, friend. The figure lowered their hood, revealing a woman with sharp green eyes and a smirk that matched Elias's own. Good. I'm looking for someone who does. Her gaze locked onto Elias. Her to the man who finds things. Elias leaned back, feigning disinterest. Depends. Who's asking? Lida Vene. She tossed a coin pouch onto the table. It landed with a heavy thud. And I'm paying. Garrett whistled. That's more coin than Thorne's seen in a year. Elias ignored him, weighing the pouch in his hand before sighing. All right, Vane. What's lost? Lyra's smile didn't reach her eyes. Not lost. Stolen. And I want it back. She leaned in, her voice dropping. Ever heard of the Shadowfire gem? Elias went very still. The name alone was enough to make his pulse quicken. That's not a job. That's a death sentence. Lyra's grin widened. Then it's a good thing you don't scare easy. The tavern's usual clamor returned around them, but Elias barely heard it. He knew what the gem meant. Power, fortune, and a quick grave for anyone dumb enough to chase it. But the weight of the coin in his hand and the fire in Lyra's eyes told him one thing. This wasn't just a job. It was the beginning of something much worse. Chapter 2. Seraphine awoke in chains. The dungeon air was thick with the stench of rust and rotting straw. Her head throbbed, her vision blurred, but the pain in her leg was worse, a white-hot agony that made her grit her teeth. She tried to move, but the iron cuffs around her wrists bit into her skin. A low growl escaped her lips as she yanked against them, the metal clanking against the stone wall. You'll tear the stitches, a voice said. Her head snapped toward the sound. A man stood in the corner, half shrouded in shadow. Lean but wiry, his arms bore the marks of a life spent in labor. Scars, burns, the kind earned in the forges or the mines. His dark hair was matted with sweat, his face smudged with dirt, but his eyes were sharp. Calculating. Seraphine's lip curled. You. Kale Mercer didn't flinch. Me. She lunged forward, chains rattling violently. If you've come to gloat, I came to save you, he said, voice flat. Silence. Then Seraphine laughed, a bitter, broken sound. An enslaved person? Save me. Kale crossed his arms, unimpressed. Unless you've got another way out of here, Your Majesty. Her nostrils flared. The title was a mockery. She was no queen here, just another prisoner. Why would you help me? After what my people have done to yours. Kale's jaw tightened. This isn't about your people. It's about Vorik. She studied him, searching for deceit. But his gaze didn't waver. Vorik plans to parade you through the capital tomorrow, he continued. Let the crowd spit on you. Throw stones. And after that, he leaned in, voice dropping. He'll execute you. Slowly, a muscle in Seraphine's cheek twitched. She'd seen Vorik's executions. The man had a taste for spectacle. Kale pulled a key from his pocket. I can get you out, but you'll have to trust me. Trust. She barked another laugh. You're a slave, a nobody, and you're a crippled queen with no army. He tilted his head. Funny how fast the tables turn. Her fingers curled into fists. She should have killed him where he stood. But the truth was, she had no choice. And he knew it. Kale stepped closer, the key glinting in the dim torchlight. Here's how this works. I free you. You don't stab me in the back the first chance you get. And together, we make sure Vorik regrets ever crossing either of us. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. You want revenge. I want him dead. Kale corrected. Same as you. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Two enemies bound by hatred for the same man. Finally, Seraphine exhaled through her nose. If you betray me, I'll kill you myself. Kale smirked. Noted, the key turned in the lock. The chains fell. And for the first time in her life, the warrior queen placed her fate in the hands of a man she'd once despised. Chapter 3. The narrow streets of Black Harbor stank of rotting fish and damp wood. The fog so thick Elias could barely see 3 paces ahead. He kept one hand on the hilt of his dagger, the other gripping the frayed edge of his cloak. Lyra moved like a shadow beside him, her steps silent, her eyes scanning every alleyway. You sure this is the right place? Elias muttered. Smells like a graveyard for unwanted seafood. Lyra shot him a sideways glance. If you wanted luxury, you should have stayed at the Rusty Anchor. Yeah, but at least there, the rats are polite enough to wait until you're done eating. A low chuckle came from the darkness ahead. Ain't no rats here, Thorn. Just us. A figure stepped into the dim light. Jarek, a wiry thief with a reputation for cutting deals and throats in equal measure. His grin was missing a few teeth. Heard you were a skin about the Shadowfire gem. Elias didn't relax. Heard wrong. We're here for the weather. Lovely fog, isn't it? Jarek spat on the ground. Funny. Real funny. His eyes flicked to Lyra. You vouch for this jester, Vane? Lyra didn't blink. He's useful. Sometimes. High praise, Elias drawled. Now, are we doing business or just standing around admiring the scenery? Jarek's grin returned sharper this time. Right to it then. I know where the gem is. Or at least, who's got it. He rubbed his fingers together. For the right price. Lyra tossed him a small pouch. Ta! Jarek caught it, weighed it in his palm, and then tucked it away. Roland Vex. He's holed up in the old watchtower by the docks. Got a dozen blades with him, all meaner than starving wolves. Elias groaned. Vex, that muscle-headed brute couldn't steal a loaf of bread without setting the bakery on fire. How'd he get his hands on something like the Shadowfire? Didn't say he stole it, Jarek corrected. Someone paid him to guard it. Someone with deep pockets and a short temper. Lyra's jaw tightened. Who? Jarek held up his hands. That's more than my head's worth. But word is they're coming for it soon. Tonight, maybe. Elias exhaled sharply. Perfect. So we got to steal a cursed gem from a small army before an even bigger army shows up to take it. He looked at Lyra. Remind me why I agreed to this again. She smirked. The coin. And the thrill. Right. The thrill. Elias rolled his shoulders. Well, if we're gonna die, Might as well make it entertaining. Jarek took a step back. You two are insane. Lyra adjusted her gloves. You just figuring that out now? Elias clapped Jarek on the shoulder, ignoring the man's flinch. Stick around. If we pull this off, you'll have a story to tell. Jarek shook his head. If you pull this off, I'll eat my boots. Elias grinned. We'll hold you to that. The fog swallowed them as they moved toward the docks, the distant crash of waves masking their footsteps. Somewhere ahead, the gem waited, and with it, answers Elias wasn't sure he wanted. But one thing was certain. Tonight, Black Harbor wouldn't sleep quietly. Chapter. For the old watchtower loomed ahead, its crumbling stone walls slick with sea spray and moss. Moonlight barely pierced the thick clouds, casting jagged shadows across the broken cobblestones leading to its entrance. Two hulking guards flanked the rusted iron door, their arms crossed, their faces set in permanent scowls. Elias crouched behind a stack of rotting crates, his breath steady. You see that? He whispered, nudging Lyra. Left guard's favoring his right leg. An old injury, maybe. Weak spot. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Right guard's got a dagger, not a sword. Close quarters, he's faster. She glanced at Elias. You take the gimp. I'll handle the quick one. Always giving me the easy jobs. Prove you can handle it. And maybe I'll upgrade you to moderately difficult next time. Elias smirked. You're too kind. They moved like ghosts. Lyra darting low along the shadows, Elias slipping behind a pile of discarded nets. The left guard shifted, rubbing his thigh with a grimace. Perfect. Elias lunged. The guard barely had time to grunt before Elias drove a fist into his ribs, followed by a sharp elbow to the temple. The man crumpled without a sound. Across the way, Lyra had already disarmed her target, twisting his wrist until the dagger clattered to the ground before silencing him with a swift knee to the gut and a chop to the neck. Elias whistled low. Show off. Lyra caught the falling guard and lowered him quietly. Efficiency isn't showing off. It's not dying. The iron door groaned as Elias pried it open just enough to slip inside. The tower's interior was dim, lit only by a few sputtering torches. The air smelled of damp stone and unwashed men. Voices echoed from above, gruff laughter, the clink of tankards. Vex men, Lyra murmured. Sounds like they're celebrating. Elias crept up the spiral staircase, pressing close to the wall. Celebrating what? Their impending doom when we ruin their night. Lyra shot him a look. Quiet, or I'll let them keep the gem and just take you back for the bounty. You miss me too much. A loud crash came from above, glass shattering, followed by raucous cheers. Elias peered over the edge of the steps. The upper chamber was packed with mercenaries, Roland Vex at the center, a hulking brute with a beard like a thorn bush. In his meaty fist gleamed a dark jewel, its core flickering with unnatural amber light. The shadow fire gem. Elias exhaled. Well, that's not terrifying at all. Lyra's fingers flexed near her blades. We need a distraction. Elias grinned. I've got just the thing. Before she could stop him, he grabbed a loose brick from the crumbling wall and hurled it across the room. It smashed through a window with a spectacular crash. Every head turned. What in the hells? Vex roared. Now, Lyra, he said. Chaos erupted as half the men bolted toward the noise. Elias and Lyra slipped through the confusion, weaving between overturned tables and cursing thugs. Vex, however, stayed put, his grip tightening on the gem as his eyes scanned shadows. Someone's here, he growled. Find them. Elias ducked behind a barrel as two men stomped past. This would have been easier if you'd just let me set something on fire. Lyra rolled her eyes. Next time, I'll bring a written request for arson. Vex suddenly stiffened, his gaze locking onto their hiding spot. A slow, ugly smile spread across his face. Or, Elias muttered, we do this the hard way. Vex raised the gem, its eerie glow pulsing. Come out, little rats. Let's play. Lyra's hand found Elias's arm, her voice barely a whisper. Ready. Elias cracked his knuckles. Born ready. The torchlight flared as the first blade swung its way. Chapter 5. The forest clearing had become their makeshift training ground. Seraphine leaned heavily on a gnarled branch, her ruined leg trembling with the effort of standing. Sweat dripped down her temple as she watched Kale practice with a stolen Valkyrian short sword. His movements still rough, but improving. "You're holding it wrong," she snapped. Kale paused mid-swing, breathing hard. "Enlighten me, O mighty warrior queen." She limped forward, her jaw clenched against the pain. "It's not an axe. You don't hack." She grabbed his wrist, adjusting his grip. "The power comes from here." She tapped his elbow, "not your shoulders." Kale flexed his fingers around the hilt. "Feels unnatural." "War isn't natural," Seraphine countered. "It's calculated brutality." He gave her a sideways glance. "You sound like my old drill sergeant." Was he right? Annoyingly so. A ghost of a smile tugged at her lips before she schooled her expression. "Again, and this time, don't telegraph your strikes like a tavern brawler." Kale rolled his shoulders and resumed his stance. His next swing was cleaner, sharper. Seraphine nodded, grudging approval. "Better. Now defend." She picked up a fallen branch and lunged at him without warning. "Hey!" Kale barely raised his blade in time to block. The wood cracked against steel. "No one warns you in battle." Seraphine pressed forward, driving him back with a series of controlled strikes. Kale parried clumsily at first, then with growing confidence. When he finally countered, his blade stopped a hair's breadth from her throat. Both of them were breathing hard. Seraphine didn't flinch. "Now you're learning." Kale lowered the sword, his brow furrowed. "You let me do that?" "Of course I did." She tossed the branch aside. "You needed the win." He scowled. "I don't need pity." "It's not pity." She wiped the sweat from her brow. "It's strategy. Confidence wins fights as much as skill." A rustle in the bushes made them both tense. Kale's hand went to his dagger, but it was just a fox darting into the undergrowth. Seraphine exhaled slowly. "We're running out of time." Kale nodded, sheathing his sword. "Vork's patrols are getting closer. We need to move." "Not yet." She limped to their makeshift camp and pulled out a rolled parchment from her pack. "We need this first." Kale peered over her shoulder as she spread the map. His eyes widened at the marked location. The tomb of the first king? That's suicide. So was breaking into Vork's dungeon. She tapped the illustration of a glowing blade. The Starforged blade can cut through anything, even Vork's armor. Kale ran a hand through his hair. Even if the legends are true, no one's come out of that tomb alive. Seraphine's gaze burned with determination. "Then we'll be the first. You can barely walk, and you can barely fight," she shot back. "Yet here we are." Kale opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. A slow grin spread across his face. "You're insane." "Finally, something we agree on." She rolled up the map. "We leave at dawn." Kale shook his head, but there was newfound respect in his eyes. "You know, for a crippled royal pain in my ass, you're not completely hopeless." Seraphine smirked. "And for a mouthy slave, you're almost tolerable." The fire crackled between them as night fell, two former enemies united by a common goal. Tomorrow, they would face death itself. But tonight, they allowed themselves to believe they might just survive. Chapter 6. The entrance to the tomb yawned before them like the maw of some ancient beast, its stone teeth carved with warnings in a language long forgotten. A cold wind whistled through the cracks, carrying the scent of damp earth and something metallic, like old blood. Kale tightened his grip on the torch, the flame casting flickering shadows across the crumbling ruins. "Tell me again why we're doing this." Seraphine adjusted the makeshift brace on her leg, her jaw set. "Because we're the only ones stupid enough to try." "That's not comforting." "It wasn't meant to be." She pushed past him, her free hand resting on the hilt of her dagger. "Stay close, and don't touch anything." Kale snorted. "What, like this?" He reached out toward a gleaming gem embedded in the wall. Seraphine spun, her hand snapping out to grab his wrist just in time. "Are you trying to die?" He grinned, though his pulse jumped under her fingers. "Just testing your reflexes." She shoved his arm away. "Next time, I'll let the spikes impale you." They moved deeper, the air growing thicker, harder to breathe. The walls were lined with skeletal remains, their bony fingers still clutching rusted weapons. Kale's torchlight caught empty eye sockets that seemed to follow their progress. "Charming decor," he muttered. Seraphine didn't answer. Her attention was fixed on the floor ahead, a pattern of slightly raised stones. She crouched, wincing as her leg protested, and brushed away centuries of dust. "Pressure plates," she murmured. "Step wrong, and we join the welcoming committee." She nodded toward the skeletons. Kale eyed the narrow path. "You first." A wise and fearless leader. She shot him a glare, but began picking her way across, her movements precise despite her injury. Kale followed exactly in her footsteps, his usual swagger replaced by tense concentration. They were halfway across when the torch sputtered. Kale cursed as the flame guttered. "We're losing light." A loud click echoed through the chamber. Seraphine froze. "Tell me that was you." Kale looked down at his boot, now firmly planted on a previously untouched stone. Surprise. The walls shuddered. With a grinding roar, sections of the floor dropped away, revealing a pit of glistening spikes below. "Run!" Seraphine grabbed Kale's arm, yanking him forward as the path crumbled behind them. They leaped the final gap, landing hard as the last of the walkway collapsed into the abyss. Kale lay on his back, gasping. Note to self, don't sneeze in here. Seraphine sat up, wiping dust from her face. "Next time I go alone." A deep, resonant hum cut through their bickering. The air itself seemed to vibrate as a pale blue light pulsed from the chamber ahead. Kale sat up slowly. "Please tell me that's not more traps." Seraphine's eyes gleamed in the eerie glow. "That's our prize." The final chamber took their breath away. Floating above a stone altar, wreathed in ethereal flames, was the star-forged blade, its surface shifting like liquid silver, the edge so sharp it seemed to cut the very air around it. Kale whistled low. "Okay, maybe worth almost dying for." Seraphine took a step forward, then stopped as the shadows at the edges of the room began to move. Figures materialized from the darkness, spectral warriors in ancient armor, their hollow eyes fixed on the intruders. Kale slowly drew his sword. "You had to jinx it, didn't you?" The lead specter raised a ghostly blade. Its voice echoed like a tomb slamming shut. "Only the worthy may claim the Starforged." Seraphine bared her teeth in a feral grin. Finally, a fair fight. As the spirits charged, Kale and Seraphine moved back to back, their earlier banter replaced by grim determination. Steel met phantom steel in showers of sparks, their movements perfectly synchronized after weeks of training. When the last spectra dissolved into mist, Kale was bleeding from a gash on his arm, and Seraphine's leg had given out completely. But the blade was within reach. Kale helped her to the altar. "This is your moment, Queen." Seraphine reached out, her fingers inches from a hilt. The air crackled with energy. "Our moment," she corrected. As her hand closed around the weapon, a shockwave of power blasted outward. The tomb shook, stones raining from the ceiling as the ancient magic recognized its new master. Kale grabbed Seraphine as the world seemed to collapse around them. "Time to go." They ran, or rather, Kale half-carried, half-dragged Seraphine as she clutched the glowing blade. Behind them, the tomb began to seal itself, the entrance crumbling shut. They tumbled into daylight just as the last stones fell, coughing up dust and adrenaline. Kale rolled onto his back, laughing breathlessly. "We're either the luckiest bastard alive or the dumbest." Seraphine held the star-forged blade aloft, its edge singing in the sunlight. She looked at Kale, her eyes alight with something fiercer than triumph. "Let's go kill a warlord." Chapter 7. The cavern trembled as the last of the ceiling collapsed, sealing the shadow fire gem and the cursed power it held beneath a mountain of stone. Dust choked the air, stinging Elias's eyes as he staggered back, coughing. Lyra slumped against the cavern wall, her breath ragged, her knuckles bloody. "We're alive," she muttered as if she couldn't quite believe it. Elias wiped grit from his face and grinned. "Disappointed?" She huffed a tired laugh. "A little. I had bets on you dying first. Sorry to ruin your plans." He offered her a hand, hauling her to her feet. "Next time, I'll try harder." The distant sound of rushing water echoed through the tunnels, the underground river they'd used to reach this forsaken place. Elias jerked his head toward the sound. "We should go, before the whole mountain decides to bury us for good." Lyra nodded, but hesitated, glancing back at the rubble. "It's really over." Elias followed her gaze. The gem was gone. Vex was dead. The shadowy figures who'd hunted them across 3 cities were buried under tons of rock. He should have felt relieved. Instead, there was just emptiness. "Guess we're out of job," he said lightly. Lyra arched an eyebrow. "What no grand speech. No poetic reflection on our near-death experience. I save my poetry for tavern bards and drunk nobles." He nudged her shoulder. "Besides, you just mock me." "True." She smirked, then winced, pressing a hand to her ribs. Elias's smirk faded. "You're hurt." "It's nothing." "Uh-huh. And I'm the queen of Brackenford." He tore a strip from his already ruined sleeve and tossed it at her. "Wrap it, unless you'd rather bleed all over the place for dramatic effect." She caught the cloth with a glare, but didn't argue, tying it tightly around her side. Happy, ecstatic, he turned toward the tunnel, then paused. "So, what now?" Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Then she shrugged. "I hear there's trouble in the northern provinces. Some warlord causing chaos." Elias groaned. "You're not serious." Deadly. She started walking, her steps uneven but determined. "Unless you've got something better to do." He stared after her, then laughed, shaking his head. "You're gonna get me killed one day, Vane." She glanced back, her grin sharp as a blade. "That's the plan, Thorn." With a last look at the collapsed cavern, Elias followed her into the dark. The world outside was still broken, still full of thieves and tyrants and treasures best left buried. But for now, this was enough. Somewhere ahead, a bird cried, the first sound of the surface. Dawn was coming, and so were they. And that was the end of the story. Comment below if you want the next chapter, and hit that like button. Please subscribe, turn on the bell, and, as always, keep the last light burning.